Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into Indian political parties.
Sounds exciting.
It is. Whether you are prepping for the UPSC or just curious about Indian politics, this deep dive is for you.
Definitely.
We're talking about a system so vast and intricate.
It really reflects India itself.
It does, and we always hear this term political party.
Right.
But what does it actually mean in the Indian context?
Well, it's more than just a group of people with similar opinions.
Okay.
In India, a political party is a way to navigate the complexities of this nation, a way to channel aspirations, and of course, a way to gain power.
Of course, power is a big part of it, right?
Always.
So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, they're all just politicians.
No, not at all.
There's a whole system at play here.
Absolutely. And to understand that system, we need to go beyond just the labels.
The labels.
Yes.
Like left, right, center.
Exactly. Globally, you have your classic categories, the reactionary, the conservative, the liberal, the radical.
Okay, so those are the global categories.
Yes, but in India, things get a bit more fluid.
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 Okay, I like that. So you have like the CPI on one end of the spectrum,
Yes.
the BJP on the other,
Right.
Congress somewhere in between.
Somewhere floating around.
But even these broad categories, they don't always capture the reality.
They don't. In India, the lines between ideology and the pursuit of power,
Yeah.
they can get a little blurry sometimes.
Right, so sometimes it's more about winning elections
Yes.
than sticking to, a strict set of beliefs.
That's right.
So that makes the Indian political scene even more fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you compare it to other countries.
Oh, I see.
Globally, there are three main types of party systems.
Okay.
You have your one-party systems,
Right.
like the old USSR,
Oh, okay.
where one party reigns supreme. Then there are the two-party systems.
Two-party.
Yes, like in the U.S.,
Okay.
where two dominant forces, they kind of duke it out.
They battle it out.
Yes, and then you have India.
The land of many, many parties.
Many.
I've read that India might have the largest number of political parties in the world.
It's no exaggeration.
Really?
Back in 2014, we had 6 national parties,
Wow.
47 state parties,
Okay.
and over 1,500 registered but unrecognized parties.
1,500.
Imagine trying to keep track of all those.
I can see why this would be a goldmine for UPSC aspirants. Talk about a complex system. It's not just knowing the names, right? It's about understanding the nuances.
Absolutely. India's size and diversity, combined with our system of universal adult franchise, all contribute to this multitude of parties.
I see.
And it leads to some fascinating scenarios.
Like?
Hung parliaments, coalition governments.
Yeah.
It's a never a dull moment.
Okay. So we've established that India has a multi-party system. But for a long time, one party really dominated the scene.
Yes.
This Congress system.
Precisely. For decades after independence, the Congress Party held a position of unrivaled power.
Like a giant...
I think of it like a giant banyan tree.
A banyan tree.
With its roots spread far and wide, providing shade and stability.
Okay, that makes sense. But even banyan trees eventually make way for new growth.
They do.
What led to the decline of this Congress system?
Well, think of it as a combination of factors. You had the emergence of strong regional identities,
Okay.
the rise of new national parties like the Janata Dal and BJP,
Right.
and a growing disillusionment with Congress's dominance.
So it wasn't just one event.
No.
It was a gradual shift.
Exactly, a gradual shift in the political landscape.
And this brings us to the multi-party system we see today, with all its complexities.
It does.
And one of the things that makes Indian politics so unique is that for many parties, there isn't this rigid ideological framework
That's true.
like you might find in other democracies.
That's right.
It's like trying to figure out a puzzle
A puzzle.
where the pieces keep changing shape.
I like.
You think you have a party pegged, and then they make a move that's completely out of character.
It's true, except for a few, like the BJP and the communist parties.
Okay.
Many Indian parties are less about ideology and more about gaining and holding on to power.
Interesting. So that makes for a dynamic, if sometimes unpredictable, political scene.
Absolutely.
This focus on power over ideology, wouldn't you say that makes it harder for voters to really differentiate between parties?
It certainly can. It can. And it leads us to another fascinating aspect of Indian politics.
Which is?
The influence of charismatic leaders.
Oh, right.
And the cult of personality that often surrounds them.
Oh, this is where things get interesting.
Very interesting.
Think about names like Nehru,
Yes.
Indira Gandhi, M.G. Ramachandran. These are figures whose personalities were so closely tied to their party's images.
It's true. And while a strong leader can really galvanize support and drive a party's success, it raises some questions.
What kind of questions?
What happens when that leader is gone?
Oh, I see.
Can the party survive?
It's a double-edged sword.
It is.
And it brings us to another key element that shapes Indian political parties: the influence of traditional factors.
Oh, absolutely. Unlike some Western democracies, where parties might form around, let's say, economic programs or social programs, Indian parties are often deeply rooted in traditional factors.
Traditional factors meaning?
Religion, caste, language, culture.
So you're talking about parties like Shiv Sena, the Muslim League,
Yes.
the Bahujan Samaj Party, parties that really appeal to these specific communities or identities.
Precisely. And this appeal to identity politics can be very powerful.
Right.
But it presents challenges.
Okay.
How do you balance these diverse identities with the need for national unity and a cohesive political system?
It's a question that India has been grappling with, I think, since its independence.
Yes.
Speaking of diversity, we can't forget the rise of regional parties,
Of course not.
which have become major players even on the national stage.
Absolutely. Parties like the BJD in Odisha,
Yes.
the DMK in Tamil Nadu. Okay.
The Akali Dal in Punjab. They've become dominant forces in their states
Right.
and often hold the key to forming governments at the center.
Wow.
They really do.
Their influence on policy decisions at the national level is significant.
Absolutely.
But let's be honest, not everything about Indian political parties is sunshine and roses.
No.
We have to talk about factionalism and defections.
Unfortunately, these are recurring themes in Indian politics.
They are.
Internal power struggles,
Yeah.
personal ambitions,
Mhm.
the lure of, well, greater influence. These all contribute to factions forming within parties,
I see.
and sometimes even entire groups of politicians switching sides.
It's like watching a game of political musical chairs.
That's a great way to put it.
And we see this across the board, right? Janata Dal, TDP, DMK,
Yes,
the communist parties, even Congress has had its share of internal strife.
it's true. And this lack of unity can have a real impact on governance and policy implementation.
Right.
It weakens the very foundation of a political party. The idea that they represent a shared set of principles.
Precisely.
And this brings us to another critical issue.
Yeah.
The lack of a strong, unified opposition in India.
Yes.
Even with so many parties, it often feels like the ruling party has a free pass.
A robust opposition is essential
It is.
for any democracy. They hold the government accountable. They offer alternative perspectives.
They keep the ruling party on their toes.
Exactly. But in India, we've often seen a fragmented opposition unable to present, well, a united front.
Okay. And this brings us to the role of the Election Commission of India.
Ah, yes.
It's their job to keep things fair and square.
Exactly. They're responsible for registering political parties
Right.
and granting recognition either at the national or state level based on their performance in elections.
And this recognition, it comes with some serious perks.
It does.
Reserved symbols, access to media platforms,
Yes.
a much simpler nomination process. It's a big deal for these parties.
It is. And there are specific criteria a party must meet to achieve national recognition.
Like what?
Things like vote share, seats won, geographical spread.
Oh, I see.
It ensures that only parties with a genuine following across the country get that coveted national status.
So in 2016, we had 6 national parties that met these criteria, each with their unique symbols
Yes.
and histories. And for those interested in a deep dive into state parties, don't worry, we have a list in the show notes.
Especially for our UPSC aspirants.
Yes, our UPSC aspirants.
Knowing your party symbols, understanding the history behind each party,
Yeah.
that's crucial knowledge, especially if you're navigating the complexities of Indian politics.
Absolutely. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We've prepared a timeline of major political party formation in India,
A timeline.
starting all the way back in 1885 with the Indian National Congress.
Ah, yes.
Understanding this historical context is key to grasping how the Indian political landscape has evolved.
a journey through ideologies, power shifts, and the aspirations of a nation.
It is.
It really is. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Indian political parties. In part one, we laid the groundwork, exploring the types of parties, the history, and what makes Indian politics so unique.
It's like we've been on this whirlwind tour.
Your whirlwind tour.
We're not done yet. There's a whole other side to this story.
There is.
The challenges.
Yes.
And even, dare I say, the shortcomings.
Of this vibrant system. That's right. For all its dynamism, the Indian party system faces, well, a number of hurdles, some deeply entrenched, and they really impact its effectiveness.
They do, and they raise a lot of questions about the future, right?
They do.
We touched upon things like factionalism and defections.
Yes.
And the lack of a strong opposition. But there's so much more to unpack. Let's start with dynastic politics. The phenomenon of political power being passed down within families.
It's a trend we see across the political spectrum in India.
Across the entire spectrum. And it's something that many citizens have really strong opinions about. Some argue that it's natural.
Natural.
Yeah, families with this legacy of public service.
Okay.
Passing the torch, so to speak.
Right. I see.
But others see it as a roadblock.
A roadblock?
Yeah, to fresh perspectives.
Uh-huh.
And a symptom of an entrenched elite.
That's the heart of the debate, isn't it?
It is.
Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with family members entering politics,
Right.
The concern is when it becomes the dominant mode of entry.
Oh, I see.
Sidelining those with merit, fresh ideas, but without that famous last name.
So it raises questions about fairness.
Fairness.
Equal opportunity.
Yes.
And whether, the people's interests are really being served.
Exactly.
Speaking of challenges, let's talk about money.
Money.
And muscle power in elections.
Yes. This is a concern that really cuts to the heart of democracy.
It does.
When wealth and coercion become the deciding factors in who gets elected.
Yeah.
It undermines the whole idea of free and fair elections.
Imagine you're a candidate with great ideas.
Okay, yes.
But limited resources, going up against someone with deep pockets.
And a network of influence.
It's like running a marathon with ankle weights.
That's a powerful analogy. It really highlights how money can create this uneven playing field.
And it's not just about campaign spending, is it?
No, it's not. We've seen instances of voter intimidation, even violence during elections.
Fueled by this desire to win at all costs.
At any cost.
So what's the solution?
Well, it's a complex problem.
It is.
There's no easy answer.
Right.
But strengthening electoral reforms is crucial.
Electoral reforms.
Yes, this includes measures to curb the use of illicit funds,
Okay.
increase transparency in political funding, and stricter enforcement of laws against, electoral malpractice.
It also requires this shift in political culture, doesn't it?
It does. We need to move away from this win at all costs mentality.
Yeah.
Towards a system that prioritizes ethical conduct.
Transparency, accountability.
Absolutely. And this is where an informed and engaged citizenry is so important.
Right. The voters have the power.
They do. They have the power to demand better from their representatives, to hold them accountable, to reject those who resort to unethical means.
Speaking of accountability, let's talk about internal democracy within parties.
Yes. The way a party functions internally, you see.
How decisions are made.
Yes.
Whether there's, space for dissent.
Diverse opinions. All of this impacts the party's health and effectiveness.
In many Indian parties, you have this top-down structure.
Right.
Decisions made by a select few at the top.
Very little input from the grassroots.
Right. And this can lead to factionalism.
Stifle innovation, yeah.
Disconnect the party from the very people they represent.
Exactly. Strengthening internal party democracy is vital.
Okay.
Ensuring regular and fair elections for party positions.
Right.
Promoting transparency in decision-making.
Okay.
Creating platforms for members to voice their opinions without fear.
We've talked a lot about the challenges, but we need to remember that this system reflects India's incredible diversity.
And dynamism.
It's
true. The multi-party system, despite its flaws, ensures that a wide range of voices and perspectives are represented.
And it allows for regional aspirations
Yes.
to be heard on the national stage.
Yes.
It creates a space for debate and discussion.
Even if it gets heated at times.
And let's not forget the resilience of Indian democracy.
Oh, absolutely not.
Faced numerous tests over the decades, yet it's endured, adapted, and come out, well, stronger.
It speaks volumes about the strength of our democratic institutions.
And the people's commitment to those values.
Absolutely.
Now, let's shift our gaze toward the future.
Yeah.
How do you see technology and social media impacting Indian political parties?
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
We've already seen the power of social media
Yeah.
in shaping political discourse,
Mobilizing voters.
even influencing elections. It's a tool that allows parties to bypass traditional media and connect directly with citizens.
But with this power comes responsibility, right?
A lot of responsibility. The spread of misinformation, echo chambers, potential for manipulation.
These are all concerns.
They are. It's a double-edged sword.
It is.
And parties need to be mindful of the ethical implications. You know, they need to prioritize accurate information.
Engage in respectful dialogue.
Absolutely. And resist the temptation to exploit those algorithms for short-term gains. It's not just about winning elections.
It's about building a healthy and informed democracy.
It is.
Now, let's consider changing demographics.
Changing demographics.
India has this young and rapidly growing population.
Their aspirations, their priorities will undoubtedly impact the political landscape
In the coming years. Parties that fail to connect with them.
to understand their concerns.
Risk becoming irrelevant.
It's a wake-up call for the established order. The old ways of doing things may not resonate with a generation that's digitally savvy.
Globally connected.
Yes.
And less tied to traditional loyalties.
Absolutely.
So the Indian party system faces many challenges.
But it also possesses these inherent strengths, you see.
And the potential for positive change.
It's an ongoing process, and we, the citizens, we have a crucial role to play in this evolution.
We need to be informed, engaged, and hold those representatives accountable.
Accountable.
We need to demand better governance.
Push for reforms.
And encourage a political culture that really prioritizes ethics and the common good.
The future of Indian democracy depends on it.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the dynamic world of Indian political parties. We've explored the origins, the intricacies, the challenges, and even taken a glimpse into the future.
It's been quite a journey, but before we wrap up, I think it'd be valuable, especially for our UPSC aspirants out there.
Yes, our UPSC aspirants.
To really delve into some key areas, the ones that often come up in the exam.
That's a fantastic idea. It's one thing to understand the broad strokes, but for those aiming to crack the UPSC, it's about, well, going deeper.
Understanding the nuances.
Right.
Being able to analyze.
Right, this complex system.
So let's start with something fundamental.
Okay.
The historical evolution of the Indian party system.
Ah, yes. History.
It's not enough to just memorize names and dates. What's crucial is understanding the why behind the what.
So, for instance, knowing that the Indian National Congress was founded in 1885, that's important.
It is, but it's more important to understand the context.
The context, okay.
The rise of nationalism, the desire for self-rule, the key figures who shaped the movement.
I see what you mean.
And this applies to other parties, too. The rise of regional parties, the Janat Party, the evolution of the BJP.
Understanding those sociopolitical factors that led to their formation.
That's crucial.
It's like piecing together a historical puzzle. Each party represents a piece of that evolution.
That's a great way to put it. Now, moving on from the historical context, another area for UPSC aspirants is understanding ideology.
Ideology.
The ideological frameworks of different parties.
Right, which takes us back to our earlier discussion about how some Indian parties, they're less ideologically driven and more focused on gaining power.
True, but even within that framework, you see there are nuances.
Okay.
For instance, the Congress and the Communist parties, they both have socialist roots.
They do.
But their interpretations and approaches to socialism, well, they differ significantly.
So understanding those distinctions, that's key.
Absolutely. It's about being able to dissect those ideologies, articulate the differences, even when they're, subtle.
Speaking of distinctions, we can't forget regional parties.
We can't. They've become such a force.
They have. What should aspirants focus on when studying them?
Well, regional parties are fascinating, each with its own history and its own set of demands. For the UPSC, it's crucial to understand their rise within their states,
Hmm.
their core agenda, and
Yeah.
how they impact national politics, especially in the context of coalition governments.
Their ability to influence those policy decisions at the national level, even while representing regional interests, it's remarkable.
It's another example of how India's diversity shapes its political landscape.
Speaking of shaping the landscape, electoral reforms.
Ah,
That's
yes.
another topic that UPSC often focuses on.
It is. Aspirants should really be well versed in the various measures that have been implemented to improve the process.
So things like electronic voting machines,
Yes, voter ID
yeah,
cards, the election commission.
ensuring free and fair elections.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And it's also important to understand the debates.
The debates around these electoral reforms.
Yes, what are the loopholes? What are the proposed solutions? Being able to critically analyze these issues, that's crucial.
Sounds like preparing for the UPSC on this topic, it requires not just memorization, but really, sharp analytical skills.
Absolutely. It's about connecting the dots,
Mhm.
seeing the bigger picture, and articulating your understanding clearly.
And concisely.
And of course, no preparation is complete without staying up to date.
Staying up to date on current events, right?
Yes, the Indian political scene is it's constantly evolving.
New alliances, old ones breaking.
New challenges emerging. Aspirants should follow the news closely, analyze election results, understand the dynamics between parties.
And form those informed opinions.
Exactly. It's not just about textbooks, it's about engaging with the reality.
The living, breathing reality of Indian politics.
Exactly. As we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners, especially our UPSC aspirants, with one final thought.
Okay.
The world of Indian politics, it's like an ocean. Vast, deep, full of surprises. An ocean.
Don't be afraid to dive in, explore its depths, and discover the treasures that lie hidden beneath the surface.
That's a beautiful analogy. And for all our listeners out there, whether you're preparing for the UPSC or simply curious about Indian democracy, remember that learning is an ongoing process.
Yes.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep engaging with this fascinating system.
It's constantly evolving.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next big insight, the one that shapes the future of Indian politics.
That's a great thought to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration. Until then, keep diving deep.